What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Taste Like Music. Jason here. It might look like I'm here by myself today, but in fact, I've got a bunch of guests lined up to talk to you even more about some records from 1972. If you haven't seen them yet, we released a whole bunch of videos this week about 1972. All three of us, myself, Joe, and Kramzer, all released our top 25 albums and songs in separate videos. So you've got six videos to catch up on. If you haven't gotten into the 1972 stuff yet. If you're not aware, we do have a great Patreon community as well. We've got a bunch of people hanging out there in our Discord, talking, chatting. We have listening parties and all kinds of fun stuff like that. We do monthly Zoom meetings with our $10 patrons. It's a lot of fun. One of the things that we are also doing there is kind of making a master list of everybody's Rate Your Music username and using that to create averaged lists of everybody in the community. And that's what we're focusing on in this video. We've taken everybody participating in that master list, averaged their scores together for 1972. We have a 1972 top 10, and I've found one person to talk about each of those records. Hopefully someone that has that record at 5 stars and loves it a lot. So that's what we're doing today. Before we get into that, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe. And we can kick it off with our number 10. It's Jethro Tull's Thick as a Brick, and here to tell you about it is Clay.
I really do mind if you sit this one out. 50 years ago, Jethro Tull released this folky prog rock epic as a means of bold retaliation of conceptual music. That's right, I'm talking about Thick as a Brick. Critics hailed their previous album, Aqualung, as a concept album, and Anderson got so fed up with this label that he decided to make what he thought was a true concept album. This included only 2 songs, both over 20 minutes in length. It's a long, multifaceted album that blends folk simplicities with the theatrical glare. The marketing of this album was so ahead of its time and resonates with me as a news reporter. To truly show that this was indeed a concept album, unlike Aqualung, which Anderson believed was just a collection of songs, the album was paired with an intricate package of a newspaper reel, and it was packed with articles of continuity, crossword puzzles, and even a story about a child named Gerald whose parents lied about his age. This grand concept, which seems silly on the surface, is actually quite juxtaposed in the music itself, and the lyrics sort of play out like the complexities of a newspaper. They're so intricate and detailed and stock full of illustrative, picturesque over-descriptors. The wind instruments are hyper and unhinged, but pulled together by the acoustic nature of these songs, which brings cohesion. Kind of like a newspaper does whenever you get to the end of a story on the front page, but you're guided to page 10 or 14 to get more info. Chaotic simplicity. It's total camp, and I can confidently say that this epic should be regarded in the upper echelons of epics, like Yes's Close to the Edge or Genesis's Supper's Ready. It's just as good as those tunes. Check it out. I implore you.
Thanks, Clay. Well said. Next up, we've got T-Rex's The Slider, personal favorite of mine, and here to tell you about it is James.
Hello, this is James here. Today I'll be talking about not only one of the great albums from 1972, or the 70s in general for that matter, but one of my favorites of all time. I'm talking about the glam rock classic T-Rex The Slider. The Slider followed the 1971 album Electric Warrior, which had spawned a massive hit in Bang a Gong, Get It On. And I was trying to think about what makes this album great. And I believe, in my opinion, Mark Bolan, who was the singer-songwriter guitarist of the band, had always looked like a rock star, but now he was a rock star. And I believe that energy and that adrenaline that he was experiencing, probably touring off of the previous album. They were making a movie, Born to Boogie, concert film about him with Ringo Starr. And Elton John was involved. And I think all that energy went into this album and made it really great. He had brought along Tony Visconti again, the producer, Visconti had produced all of Tyrannosaurus Rex T-Rex albums up to this point. So I think he was a perfect producer for this. And the sound that he created was more polished than on Electric Warrior. And the songs just seem to melt into like this fantasy landscape of glam rock perfection. I can't describe it, but it's just very fluid, and every song just works great. There's so many great hooks. Of course, Boland's oddly descriptive lyrics, Visconti's perfectly placed strings, and the background harmonies of Flo and Eddie and Boland himself, I think, are always a highlight of every T-Rex album that they're on. So let's talk about a couple of songs here. Metal Guru, which opens the album, I think it's a great uplifting song. It makes you smile. Matter of fact, the whole album makes me smile because I really, like I said, I feel the energy of Boland coming through here. I feel like he's, like energized and excited, and I think it really shows through on these songs. A song like Rock On. I love the oddly offbeat chord in this song. It's just typical Mark Boland chord progressions, and it's a nice lead into the Slider song, which is my favorite on the album. Got this soul thumping rhythm section, and you got the haunting background vocals, which I think really makes the song like this great earworm. One of my favorite songs on the album that a lot of people don't talk about is Buick McCain. I think it brings a little edge to the album as it closes out on side one, and I really love that track. Then side two opens with Telegram Sam. It's another sparkly glam tune. It's once again, it displays Boland's upbeat spirit, and it's an obvious attempt, I think, to capture the Bang a Gong vibe on this album. Baby Strange, a perfect glam rock tune to me. It's got these very seductive vocals and, of course, more offbeat chords. And then Who Says Chugling Can't Be Fun? Chariot Chugal is a romping glam fest, and it's a great song. It's probably one of my top songs on the whole album. I love the sequencing of the album. I love the way that a lot of the acoustic songs that I didn't really mention, like Mystic Lady, Spaceball, Ricochet, Ballrooms of Mars, and Main Man, are kind of placed in between these glam rock classics to kind of balance out the whole album. And let's not forget about the cover. I think that shows it's a very iconic cover. It shows Mark Boland in a grainy, badly developed black and white photo with a top hat, and it's just a very iconic photo. I mean, it's one of the great album covers to me of all times, and I think it puts you in that glam rock mood of before the needle ever hits the groove on the album. This album is wonderful in every way, and I never get tired of listening to it. It is T-Rex, The Slider, 5 stars.
Thanks, James. Next up, number 8 on our average list for 1972 is Machine Head by Deep Purple, and here to talk about it is Zach.
Hello, I'm Zach, and I'm here to talk about Machine Head by Deep Purple. So I want to start out by just sort of saying the first album I heard by Deep Purple was the Greatest Hits collection. It was called Deepest Purple, the very best of Deep Purple, just 12 tracks, and I listened a lot to that one. Really enjoyed it. That was around age 10, I think. And after that, I started buying the all the studio albums. Really focusing, of course, on that Mark II lineup, which included Ian Gillan as lead vocalist. And I had also heard Gillan in Jesus Christ Superstar, and there you can really hear like, oh God, this is one of the best rock vocalists really ever. Just such a talented vocalist, and maybe that's his best singing. But in Deep Purple, he's still really a joy to listen to. Really love how he's so melodic and kind of goes between that and the high kind of shrieking vocals. But it never feels awkward or out of place. It's just so well connected and so cool. So he's great. But I think really the core of Deep Purple's sound is the instrumentalists. Richie Blackmore's guitar and John Lord's organ especially. And then you've got Ian Pace on drums, and he's really underrated drummer. Just, both really in time and also really exciting. Really, love his playing, and very easy to work out to his playing too, just as kind of a weird aside. So, going back to Machine Head, you got to start with the opener, Highway Star. That's really an album highlight. True to its name, it's super speedy. It has a little bit more of that like heavy metal sound as a result, and it really features some great solo sections. There's one that's kind of like Blackmore and Lord playing off of each other, the guitar and the keyboard. And then our one's more of like a dual solo, 2 guitars by Blackmore. Both of them are really cool because they kind of have that like classical influence. It almost sounds like Bach. And, that would become very influential because, a lot of the guitarists in the 80s and stuff would be doing that a lot. As part of that like virtuoso playing, and it could get kind of cheesy at that point. But when Deep Purple first did it, it just kind of had a magical quality because they were doing it right on top of this like super raw rock music, and really love it. And Highway Star works so well. Then you got the second track, which is Maybe I'm a Leo, and that one's I think a grower because it's a real nice daydreamy track, and it's a nice kind of calmer track after the fast Highway Star. That's followed by Pictures of Home. This one has a lot of solo work by the members, and they kind of trade off almost like a jazz ensemble would, even though they're not playing jazz, they're playing rock, but just the way they're trading off. And even Roger Glover has a little bass solo, which is always really fun to hear. The next track is Never Before, and that's interesting because you had Smoke on the Water, which of course is the one everybody knows, but that was not the lead single. The band thought it was Never Before, and I think when you listen to the album a lot, you'll kind of understand what they mean because Never Before has got a really great melody and hook to it, and it's really fun to listen to. So I could totally hear why they thought Never Before would be the big one, but they probably didn't account for just that the enjoyability of Smoke on the Water's iconic riff, and just how big of an effect that would have on getting it on the radio. So going to that track, a lot has been said about it, but it's just such a simple little riff. But even that, it kind of has a nice melodic progression that kind of underlies it. So even though it's a very simple riff, it still creates a really nice melody, and that just leads to a really great song. And then the recording of it by Martin Birch, just it's really a song to test headphones to. It's a perfectly recorded song, so that's really cool. Then you move on to Lazy. And Lazy is super fun, really brings a smile on your face because these guys are such technically accomplished musicians, and they really show it off here, but just in a very laid-back, fun way. I mean, that's in songs called Lazy, and you really hear that kind of like laid-back feel to the song. Really delivers on that promise. And then finally, you got Space Truckin', and that's even more fun, almost like a little bit of a glammy side to the lyrics, and kind of that like funky attitude to the playing, and just kind of a great like rock and roll energy for the last song. So just to kind of sum it up, Machine Head is it's a pretty standard hard rock record, and some might even think like, oh, there's a lot of albums like this, and maybe the lyrics aren't that special, but I think this is one reason I like it so much is because it's that kind of record, but done so well by such technically accomplished musicians, by such intelligent musicians. They're really working really hard and applying a lot of thought to the way that, to the songwriting and to the playing, but just to do something very simple and fun and lighthearted and joyous. Not all music needs to be depressing or poetic or overly complicated. That's all great too, but just here you really just get a lot of effort put into just a really simple, fun rock record, and you really hear that pay off, and that's why I think this one is really stood out the test of time for me, and I just really love it.
All right, thanks a lot. Number one record is the number 7 on our list, Big Star, of course, and here to tell you about that record is Vanessa. If you do end up joining our Discord, you'll get to know Vanessa very quickly. She is one of the moderators, and she's just the best. So here she is talking about Big Star.
Album I'm going to be talking about is number 1 record by Big Star. One of my top favorite albums of 1972, as well as one of my top favorite albums of all time. I just remember the first time I heard this album when I was in my early 20s. I'd heard about Big Star quite a bit because they were very influential to a lot of bands that I liked, and I heard covers of their songs. So I finally checked out the split release, I think, of number 1 record in Radio City, And I was immediately taken by number one record. Like, the songs are super catchy. The singing is great. I love their harmonies. Both Chris Bell and Alex Chilton sing on the album, and I think they both play off each other very, very well. Like, they have different kinds of voices, but they blend together very well. And the music itself, it blends a lot of the things that I love about pop music. They bring together the pop sensibilities of like mid-60s Beatles and some of the jangle of the Byrds at the time. But they make it something new. Like, they bring it's fresh. It's something new for the 70s. And it's just a shame that it didn't see the commercial success in it when it was new that it should have. But it did get a lot of critical acclaim, for good reason, I think. All the songs are great. If I had to pick a favorite side, I would pick the first side because it's just killer from beginning to end. They've got a great blend of more upbeat, up-tempo songs and some ballads. And every song sticks in your mind. They're great. But the second side has my absolute favorite song, which is Give Me Another Chance. I love that one. Everything is just beautiful about that song. But overall, I think maybe near the end, it's not quite as strong as side one. But I still love everything about the album.
Thanks, Vanessa. Next up, number 6. For 1972. According to our patrons, we've got Harvest by Neil Young, and here to tell you about it is Patrick.
Hello, Tubes of You. Ozzy and Patrick here. Hello, Jason, Joe, and Cramser. Thank you very much for giving me just a few minutes to talk about Neil Young's album Harvest and to share my love of this album with your viewers. This is one of my favorite Neil Young albums. It contains some of his best work. I love the playing on this album. His backing band is in top form, the Stray Gators. It contains backup work from Linda Ronstadt and James Taylor. Linda Ronstadt in particular on Heart of Gold, her backing vocals are really good. Ben Keith, who plays steel guitar on this album, is spectacular, especially his work on the song Old Man. It starts off wonderfully with Out on the Weekend. Neil's packing it in and buying a pickup, and I'm right there with him. I can't wait to go on this adventure. It's very introspective work for Neil. It's comparable to his Blue or his Blood on the Tracks. It contains some of his most personal work. It contains symphonic work. It has folk tunes. It has country tunes. It has rockers. It has everything. I love the song Words. It's almost like a progressive country rock tune. It veers between 4/4 and 11/8. It has a fantastic guitar solo on it. Neil's playing throughout this album is spectacular. He had back problems during this time, so he had to lay down his electric, pick up his Martin acoustic, and he sounds wonderful. He lets his harmonica do his guitar solos for him. It's just a fantastic album through and through. If you're not familiar with Neil, this is a great starter album. This is a great introduction to get into Neil Young, especially his work from the early through mid-70s. One of my favorite artists of all time. I hope that if you haven't heard Neil Young, you would give this album a chance. Please check it out. Thanks.
Thank you, Patrick. Next up, number 5 on our averaged list is Talking Book by Stevie Wonder, and here to tell you about it is Adrian.
Talking Book by Stevie Wonder was a very important stepping stone within my musical journey. This was one of the very first adventures into the style of soul, funk, if you really want to call it R&B, into music that I ever took. And it's a very interesting record for that, because in many ways you could very much describe Stevie Wonder as a bit of a musical chameleon. He takes all these different styles and incorporates them in such a unique and interesting way that's solely built upon, well, who Stevie is as an artist. My initial listen to this was done for a series in which I was going to rank every album of the year winner by the channel. And from that immediate listen, I just fell in love. Some of my favorite cuts there were Maybe Your Baby, Tuesday Heartache, You've Got a Bad Girl, and Superstition. Each and every one of them are just utterly tremendous songs, but all of the songs begin to open themselves more with repeated listen. The Sunshine of My Life is a perfect opener and really is able to showcase everything that's going to happen throughout the record. Big Brother is another absolutely tremendous cut, and I'd be crazy to not mention a cut like You and I. Stevie Wonder really was a bit of a gateway into funk and soul music for me, and the bass and synth work on the record are just utterly sublime, as well as the production, which is pretty unparalleled in most of his discography. It's an incredibly infectious record that's amazingly crafted and performed by a true icon. And even if this isn't my favorite Stevie record, let alone from this year, it's such an important record just in the evolution of music to me and helping me get into something that I would have found to be very foreign previously. It's just an absolutely wonderful record and an incredibly important piece of music itself, in my opinion. Thank you.
All right, thanks a lot. Next up, we've got the Rolling Stones' Exile on Main Street at number 4. Telling you about it today is Steph.
Hi. Exile on Main Street is one of my favorite albums of 1972 because it's on the albums leading up to this, they started out as a band that very much was aspiring to emulate their inspirations like Chuck Berry and Muddy Waters, and on the albums leading up to this, they slowly developed their style more and more. And I feel this is like truly the album where they really embody their influences for as a whole, to the point where it's just they're no longer constantly trying to aspire to sound like someone. They just are that style of music now. And it's also, I put it in that category of albums that have a specific sound that's unique to themselves. For some reason, I always compare it to OK Computer. They're not very similar, like songwriting-wise, but they were both recorded in empty mansions. And they both have a concept to them. And this one, even though they're a British band, it's kind of like a celebration of American music. And they dive really deep into that. You get folk, blues, R&B, old school rock and roll, country. And the songs are really great. Everyone's playing really well. And the production sound, it has, I don't know how to describe it, but it has it sounds kind of sludgy to me. But in like the most tasteful way to where you can still hear everything and it still sounds good, but it's just like the right amount of like dirtiness to the guitars. And yeah, the songs are fantastic. I don't think I'd call it my personal favorite album by them, but I feel it showcases their personalities better than a lot of their other albums. And if I had to describe this album in one sentence, I'd say it's like being invited to a really good party in hell on an especially good night. So yeah, I love Exile on Main Street. One of my favorites. 5 out of 5.
All right, thanks, Steph. Up to number 3 now, and we've got Pink Moon by Nick Drake, and we've got Alex to tell you about it.
Pink Moon is probably a top 10 album for me of all time. And I think the reason for this is because it defies the traditional model of the sad singer-songwriter. People credit this album with kickstarting the sad singer-songwriter trend, actually, but I disagree with that on 2 points. For one thing, I think this line of thinking clearly ignores the existence of Jackson C. Frank, which is an incredible sin. But more than anything, I just don't really view Pink Moon as a sad album. And I totally understand why people do. Nick Drake was a very depressed individual. He would take his own life in just a couple of years, very tragically. But this album, to me, is not about depression. I think there's actually a lot of beauty in here. Drake was a very solitary guy, generally, and a lot of these songs sound like ruminations on the natural world, on the comings and goings of existence, the pros and cons, ups and downs, from somebody who, as Green Day famously put it, walked on his own lonely road day in and day out, the only road that he's ever known. The record's just him paired with his acoustic guitar, which he plays damn well, and I mean damn well. This might be my favorite acoustic guitar album of all time, and I'm actually not even sure it's that close of a fight, frankly. The guitar excels as a standalone instrument here, but some of my favorite moments are when it acts as an accompaniment to Drake's very soft-spoken vocal style. Take the song Road, for instance, where Drake's guitar ghosts his vocal melody to give it a kind of that extra level of strength. It's such a great piece of playing that every time I listen to it, it makes me want to pick up the guitar again. That's a really special power right there. Drake and his instrument are interconnected very thoroughly in this song, but also just throughout the record. I particularly love the 1-2 punch of horn, which is this minimalistic instrumental that's just individual notes which Drake lets ring out for what feels like an eternity, and this is the shortest song on the record, mind. And then Things Behind the Sun, the longest song, which seems to be Drake pushing himself to ignore the critics and the gawkers and just let his music run free, just let it speak for itself. As he puts it, open wide the hymns you hide, you find renown, while people frown at things that you say. Indeed he did. And what a tragedy that this record became his epitaph rather than his ticket to the recognition that he so clearly deserved. But we hear this sound in so many folk records today. You listen to Sufjan Stevens, Carey, and Lowell. Try to convince me that Sufjan isn't going for this exact sound. Or Sam Beam in the Iron and Wine album, The Creek Drank the Cradle, or even Justin Vernon in his own kind of unique way. They're all connected to Nick Drake, all going for that very distinctive sound. But I'm not sure anyone ever pulled off this sound as genuinely as Nick Drake did, and perhaps that fact is exactly why he's no longer with us. Rest in peace. Fantastic record, one of my all-time favorites.
Thanks, Alex. Number 2, we've got Yes with Close to the Edge. And talking about that record today is Mark.
Close to the Edge is my album of the year for 1972. It contains my song of the year, the title track. It is in my opinion, the best prog album ever released. It's the best album by one of my all-time favorite bands, Yes. And it is in my all-time top 5, behind only a few other albums that are timeless classics. What makes this album so good? Well, first of all, if you like progressive rock, this album is as good as it gets. If you like long songs, this album has the 18.5-minute title track, which is, in my opinion, the very best long track ever recorded. It's up there with the best of them, and in my opinion, is better. It starts off with the sounds of nature that transform into a total chaos that is designed to throw you off balance and more or less to take you out of this world, because what this song does is it transports you into another world. It does what progressive rock does best. It takes you out of Earth and into somewhere that you've never been before. It's mystical, it's magical, it has awesome guitar playing, keyboard playing, drumming, and of course Chris Squire's walking bass. It is one of the greatest songs ever recorded. Side 2 contains 2 tracks. The first track is And You and I, which is quite simply one of the most beautiful progressive rock songs ever. It's just a beautiful love song. It's one man singing to his lifelong partner. And then the final track is probably the best rocker that Yes does, Siberian Cat Shrew. This song was the last one for me to get on board with, but I love it. It's just a great rock song. And that's Close to the Edge.
And the number 1 album in our community, an unbelievable average score of 4.8 stars. That can only be The Rise and Fall of Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars by David Bowie. Talking about that record today is Andrew.
David Bowie's Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars. This, to me, is one of the all-time great artists working at the peak of his powers with a killer support band. It's basically everything you'd want in glam and pop rock. He had done some great stuff before this, but this really feels like the culmination of everything he had been leading up towards. The ultimate measuring stick for anyone in this style. Absolutely killer individual tracks, and a fun, unique thread of this whole science fiction meets rock and roll. But yeah, this basically has everything you'd want in this style. It's big, it's melodic, passionate, theatrical, and it can just straight up rock as well. Years ago, I was on this road trip and they were playing album sides. One of the ones they chose was the A side of this record. And hearing those first 4 tracks in particular, 5 Years, to Soul Love, to Moon Age Daydream, to Starman, feel like those could go toe-to-toe against just about any opening record ever. And then we haven't even talked about the highlights on side 2. So there are lots of great musical flourishes throughout as well, whether that's the penny whistle and sax on Moon Age Daydream, the crunchy guitar on the title track, Suffragette City with its like fun little synth near the end. Lots of fun little moments like that, and not really a bum note on the record as far as I'm concerned. Even the lesser known tracks feel like they could be, crowning achievements of your standard fare act. So I don't think it really gets much better than this. Best album of 1972 as far as I'm concerned. In conversation among one of the all-time great records ever. So I can't speak highly enough about this one. Highly recommended to anyone who hasn't already heard it. 5 stars.
All right. Thanks, Andrew. Great job, everybody. Thanks to everyone for participating. Thanks to everybody who watched the 72 videos and commented. It was a lot of fun. It was a great week. We will be doing more of them. The next year that we're going to hit is 1982. So if you want to play along and start listening, get into your 1982 records, you can start doing that now. It will take us a couple months to listen to enough records that we feel like we can adequately make a top 25. So we're looking tentatively at November, probably when that'll happen. Keep an eye out for that. All the regular content's going to continue for now. So again, make sure you like and subscribe, hit the bell for notifications. Thanks to our patrons. If you're interested in Patreon and being part of this, having your scores added to our averages and possibly even participating in a video similar to this for 82 week, head over to the Patreon, check it out. There's different tiers with different perks as options. So go check it out. Thanks again for watching, and we will see you in the next one.